Chapter 16. The Second Watch. Dreaming. The wind from the north, that shrieking wind, goes bitterly over the earth, striking ice to all the lands. Winter, and a very dry cold. Chanticleer is dreaming, in spite of himself, the same dream again. Well, he has tucked his head beneath his wing, where the breathing moistened an old filth. The moisture loosened an odor which the rooster sucked in through his nostrils, and the odor fumed into his brains, and thick and helplessly, Chanticleer is dreaming. He stands on stone, abjectly. He knows what's about to happen, and it does. Far in the darkness the woman wails, as she has wailed before, no nearer to him, no less aggrieved, no different. And yet the rooster is sickened all over again by her sorrow and his own sin. Jug, jug! They are the only two in an endless desolation. If one is sad, then the other should help. Jug, jug! But he cannot even find her, the wretched cock, and if he could, what would he do? He can only rock his body back and forth, listening to her loneliness, unable even to tell her that someone is listening, that someone else is lonely too. Jug, jug, she weeps, a solitary woman. All the world is a wandering, solitary woman. Jug, jug, unspeakable sorrow. And finally, as distant as death, Teru, she's gone. The blackness is vast and empty, and Chanticleer is allowed an interlude to suffer his guilt. Like a tumor in his gut is the feeling that he is responsible for that woman, and the uglier premonition that if one night they met, she would despise him. Chanticleer hates this dream, but the dream will play itself unto the end. Suddenly, "Sing," says the voice, like coldness all around him. But then the second voice is the sharper shock, and he snaps erect. It sounds exactly like his own. A cock-crow asks, "What shall we sing?" A new twist in the same old words, a more insinuating torment. Why can't he see? "Of those we remember," says the voice, and the cock-crow answers, "So, our happiness is in their histories." "And who's the finest of us all?" says the voice, and the cock-crow asks, "Of you and us together?" "Aye, your savior and my guide," says the voice, and the cock-crow responds, "Why, Mundo Cunny Dog." "That's not me! That's not me!" Chanticleer cries. "I didn't say that name!" His blind eyes rolling, his whole body trembling. But his negative is nothing in this dream. A chant goes up, echoing as though in marble arches, down stone hallways, a passionless plain-song dipped in wax. "Oh God," the rooster groans, folding himself into a ball, "how often will he have to suffer the punishment of his fault? 2 times? 10? Forever?" The chant dies away, and there follows a universal silence. Chanticleer shivers painfully and waits to wake. He has been accused. This is when the dream will usually release him, stunned, into the world again. But he doesn't wake. This silence is premonitory and unfinished. "There is," says the voice. "There is one other to commemorate," says the voice, and the cock-crow whispers, "Who?" Chanticleer holds very still. Water's dripping somewhere. "Who?" "Him who listens," says the voice, but the cock-crow whispers, "Who?" And the voice says, "Chanticleer." A sound like wind, like the shrieking wind, starts in the rooster's ears. And the cock-crow whispers, "But he hasn't passed yet." "Passing," says the voice, "passing." The shrieking sound, thin and weird, rises a pitch. It pierces Chanticleer's skull and cuts his throat. It's him. It's his own beak open, his own tongue thrust out, and his own voice whining. He's trying to say no. He's trying to deny the whole ungodly ritual, but all that he can produce is a mute and lingering scream. Not my name. When a lord lays down his lordship, says the voice. What is that? Says the voice, and the cock's crow whispers, dreadful of the truth. A passing. Not my name, not me. My God, I want to die. When the strong hearts weaken, says the voice. What do you see? Says the voice, and the cock's crow whispers. A dying. Even so, our brother Chanticleer, says the voice, and the cock's crow whispers, Who will believe us when we sing? Any who see the bones. The bones, says the voice, the bones shall condemn a cock, and bones shall vindicate our singing, says the voice. Chanticleer has never hurt so much in all his life. He can neither shape nor stop his screaming. Sing, says the voice, dirges! And then descends a chant so cold and hard that it falls like the flat of a hammer against his temple. Now, now, now! And he wakes. And it is in fact the north wind shrieking through the top of the hemlock, gleefully. Chapter 17. The Third Watch. Wakings. Don't! Chanticleer, please don't go! You've got to sleep! The rooster stood, stretched on a hemlock branch, prepared to fly. Wind, though it caught only at the top, made the whole tree tremble, and Perlote was pleading. Don't! Chanticleer began a vicious sentence. You! He bit it off. He lowered himself and gazed at her as though discovering something. Are you still awake? He said. Always, said Perlote. Always when you leave I am awake. You know, then? I know. This I know, that you leave me. You wander abroad the whole night long. I know. It's what I don't know worries me. I get restless. You are tired. I can't sleep. You don't want to sleep. I don't sleep well. No, you hate to sleep. A few nights, Perlote. A few? A few? Shall I count the weeks, dear Chanticleer, since you've allowed yourself one good night's sleep? Tell me, when did the winter begin? Better yet, tell me, why don't you sleep? I've got to go. Don't, she cried, softer. Don't. Stay with me. Oh, Perlote, what good would that do? The hen bent her head in the darkness, then, and whispered, You might touch me tonight. You might not pull away from me tomorrow morning. Some good. For a long moment, Chanticleer sat utterly still upon this lowest branch of the hemlock. Hens slept all above them, and above the hens wild scudding clouds, and a bright moon, and the ceaseless wind. The night was frigid, the moon an absolute zero. The waterfall thundered less these days, since the water sheeted down a sluice of ice, and the shores of the Liverbrook, winter-bitten, were snaggled with a thinner ice, and Lord Chanticleer was cold, simply cold. Cold was the thing that made him shiver. I've got to go, he said. Perlote cried, Why? But he leaped and left her behind. He glided 20 yards and landed, and stood still in grey light, and looked and saw his dim moon shadow lying down beside him. Because I am so cold, he whispered. Why else? But the shadow, which could be seen only from the side of the eye, seemed unsatisfied with that. Why? Well, said Chanticleer. He shrugged. He glanced around the frozen night, and the wind blew. Well, to see the animals. he said, and he said, "This is a very good reason, to see my animals." Afterthoughts may turn into very good motives and opportunities in their own right. Lord Chanticleer went to see his animals, 20 yards back by Rooster Strut's. Ah, how long had it been since he'd smelled the smell of the mouse's hole? Such a warm, consoling odor, like bread dough, close and yeasty and altogether homely. The dear mice. Why, Chanticleer wondered as he breathed their sleep smells in. Why had he denied himself this kindness? His shoulders were pressed against their entrance, his head and beak sunk to the hollow of their quarters. He felt a sob thump in his chest. His breath, when he drew it deeply, sounded like a sigh. Immediately a tiny voice spoke. "I'm sorry, Rooster," it said. "Freytag!" Chanticleer was startled by life. "Is that you?" "Well, but I wish it wasn't. But it is, dear Rooster," said the mouse Freytag. "It's me." "You're still awake?" "Well, but I don't have the right to sleep." "Freytag, you sound so tired." There was silence in the mouse's hole, then a tiny rustling, and then a different voice spoke. "He's very tired, Rooster. You are right, but I think that maybe what you're hearing mostly is that Freytag is very sad." "Wodenstag," said Chanticleer, "are you awake too?" "Oh, well, yes," said Wodenstag. "Rooster?" A third voice, the youngest of them all. "Samstag, what is it?" "You see, we are all awake." "Why? It's the middle of the night." "Well, we haven't slept for a long time now." "Shh, Samstag," whispered several of the brothers. "You shouldn't mention such things to the Rooster. He doesn't need to worry over us." But Chanticleer was right there, listening. He wasn't far away. "In God's name, tell me," he said, feeling like a stranger. "Why don't you sleep?" Samstag whispered, still as though he were not there. "I think that I will tell him, Wodenstag, on account of he asked." And to Chanticleer, "We stay awake with Freytag to keep him company." Chanticleer said, "Freytag," but the mere speaking of the mouse's name unmanned that mouse, and he began to cry. Such a pitiful snuffling, and so polite that Chanticleer felt gross and clumsy. He truly didn't understand Freytag's trouble, though all the brothers seemed to. How long had this been going on? How much had he missed? And why should tiny mice protect their lord? The Rooster, by willing it, restrained his own confusion. He gathered all his care and all his sensitivity into a gentle voice, and spoke for the mice alone. "Do you remember," he asked slowly, "how I took you from the river long ago when you were nips about to drown?" "Yes," said Wodenstag and Donnerstag and Sontag. "Yes, yes," all of them full of solemnity. "Do you remember, Freytag?" Freytag said, "Yes." "You were so brave to climb from the river onto my back, remember? And you trusted me, and that's why I could save you then, remember, Freytag?" "Do you trust me now, enough to lay your trouble on me, so that I could help you now? I still help, little Tag. I don't hurt mice. Do you believe that?" "Oh, truly, truly." "Then tell me, why? Why don't you sleep? Why do you cry?" Freytag fairly wailed, "Because the Rooster is so good. That is the trouble." And then deep in a wee gloom, "Because I am so wicked. That is the trouble." Chanticleer's face burned hot, a rush of shame at this innocent division of good and evil, and he couldn't speak. Freytag could. Freytag said, "A wicked creature doesn't have the right to sleep." "You are not a wicked creature." Chanticleer struggled to keep his voice from sounding angry. "Oh, yes, I am very wicked," sighed the mouse, "because And then the words tumbled from him. "I made fun of you, Rooster. I mocked you. Yes, yes. I walked like you walk, and I crowed like you crowed, and all my brothers laughed at it. And you would never hurt me, but I hurt you, dear Rooster, because you didn't smile at what I did, but you were kind. You didn't scold me either. You just walked away from me. Oh, Rooster!" Chanticleer snatched his head from the mouse's hole and raised his face to the dark tree forms beneath the stars, and he wanted to cry. "You just walked away from me." The wind shrieked a manic winter in the woods. The moon accused him. The rooster felt naked. Walking away, that was his sin, not Freytag's. Yet that little mouse accepted the fault without a second thought, because that little mouse, and here was the worst pain, that little Freytag loved him. He put his head into their hole again. With fierce restraint, he counted the words like coins. "You think you sinned against me?" he asked. "It is the way that I am," said Freytag. A bleak answer, a bleak mouse. "If you sinned against me," said Chanticleer, "then it's my right to punish you, isn't it?" "Yes." "But not your right at all. You have to accept my will." "Yes." "Freytag?" "My will is not to punish you. So you can't punish yourself any more with not sleeping. Freytag?" "What?" "My will is to forgive you. I forgive you. There's no sin anymore. It's gone. Do you hear me? Forgiveness makes a sin gone, and you are good again. Good creatures have every right to sleep. Go to sleep, Freytag. Go to sleep now. Can you go to sleep?" Freytag took a long time to answer. Oh God, why couldn't all the world smell as kind and woolen and comforting as a mouse's hole on a winter night? Finally, the honest mouse answered, "I don't know." Chanticleer said, "How if I told you one thing else?" "What?" said Freytag. "That I love you with all my heart, little Tag." "Yes," sighed Freytag, infinitely relieved. "Yes, that makes a difference." Wodenstag asked, "Then we can all go back to sleep?" "Do I love you any less?" said Chanticleer. "No," said Wodenstag. "Then good night. Good all of your nights. Sleep, Tags. Sleep, please." "Good night, Rooster." "Rooster?" "What?" "And we love you." Chanticleer pulled himself into the winter wind again, sucking huge breaths of air. That was exactly what he could not hear. This loving him. Freytag could hear it. All the mice could hear it, because they were truly, truly innocent, and their hearts were so good, so worthy of the love. But Chanticleer the rooster was a curse. The more that he was loved, the more he deceived, and the further he was from the truth, and from all who would love him. This loving was a scourging. Almost he buried himself in the shrieking wind. Almost he flung himself deeper into the night. But suddenly the wind died for an instant, and in the pause he heard a small sound, a nearly inaudible crunching to his left, behind a thicket, at the base of the stone cliff. Somebody else was wakeful. Oh, poor Chanticleer! Somebody else had secrets he knew nothing about. Oh, incompetent lord of the animals! The crunching softened to a chewing, and the chewing ended with the smack of a narrow beak. As a criminal drawn to his own crime, almost seeking the pain he deserved, Chanticleer stole toward the thicket. The wind resumed its whistling insanity, covering his approach, and he peeped to the wall, and he saw the white shadow of a hen, alone, bending away from him and pecking something. "Chalcedony!" he wailed. Instantly the skinny hen whipped around and recognized him. fluttered for a moment, then covered something with her butt. She plopped down, embarrassed. Chanticleer cried, "Does nobody sleep any more? What are you doing?" He sounded so angry that he shocked the truth from her. "Snacks, sir," she said. "Snacks? Snacks? What are snacks?" Chanticleer's cry meant to encompass the universe, but Chalcedony took all things personally and in particular. Miserably she stood up and stepped aside, admitting to the nest of insect limbs beneath her. Her secret? Crushed skeletons and dead skins. "Snacks," she said. Chanticleer stared at the junk, astonished. He looked closely into Chalcedony's face and saw, to his enormous grief, a cicada leg hanging at the corner. She fed on garbage. Well, the hen hastened to explain. "Well, Jasper doesn't never leave me eat. No blame on her, so I keep me some little snacks where she can't see nor gobble them before I do, you see, and come the night I'll steal from my roost, but I'm sorry now that I do, and maybe snack a bit and then steal back, thinking to myself, who's the wiser? Who's the worser for my little habits? Thinking no one. So I've slept the better these nights, but maybe I should have shared, sir. That's what you're thinking by your silence, sir. That how come Chalcedony's so selfish? And why didn't she share, sir?" The rooster only gazed at her, long and intensely. "And you're right," she whispered, blushing, answering for him. "Why mayn't Chalcedony share a treasure if and what she has one?" She ran out of words. His unwavering gaze shamed and baffled her. The lord of the land raking her with silent judgment, so what could the poor hen do? She began to curtsy, and then she couldn't quit. Up and down, grinning silly, she curtsied, and her lame claw ached. It was a hoarse whisper when finally the rooster spoke. "What have I missed?" he said. "That I eat, sir," she chattered excuses for him. "Nothing else. It's what I do." "No, you, Chalcedony," he whispered. "How could I have missed seeing you?" "Oh, you never, sir," she said. "I'm right here, was always right here, never did no planning to be somewheres else save here." She curtsied furiously. "Chalcedony," the grave whisper, a rasping, "Look at you." "At me?" Oh, 'twas a terrible thing to be the object of this conversation. "And this garbage," he said, more scornfully. Suddenly he reached his beak to the corner of hers, and she flinched because either he was going to strike her or to kiss her. He did neither. He picked the insect's leg and spat it to the wind, and then she was flustered truly. "Snacks, sir," she mumbled. "Sir." How ugly she must look. "Look at you!" he cried. "One hen skinny as a pinch, but I never saw it before. Oh, Chalcedony! Can you forgive me?" That was a frightening switch. No, Chalcedony didn't know about forgiving. She knew about weeping. Now she just wanted to weep and disappear. "Are you angry?" she whispered. "You shouldn't be so skinny," cried the rooster. "I'm working on a cure," she whispered. "You?" he barked. "You!" roared Chanticleer. His voice battered her, and the sobs rose up of their own accord. So then she was crying after all. "No, not you!" thundered Chanticleer. "Me! I'm the one responsible! I should feed you! I should make you fat! Dear God in heaven, one of my hens is eating garbage!" Chalcedony couldn't think up excuses any more. She plain cried to be so wrong. Wrong to have brought her snacks back home. Wrong to be so selfish. It was at this precise moment that John Wesley Weasel came running from the south, bellowing news in the night. Chanticleer groaned. "Nobody sleeps any more." Chalcedony just lay down, trying to make privacy of her tears. "Is trouble southward?" shouted the weasel, bounding through dead leaves and fetching up in the rooster's face. "Troubles, you bet, and might be the rooster he doesn't want to wait till daybreakings to do something about it." The one-eared weasel was grinning. He positively delighted in bearing bad news because crises put him at the center of excitement, and centers were fine places in which to strut. "Because if furry buggers sees this, might be they passes out what not at the frightfulness. Hello, chickie." He grinned at Chalcedony, and she shrank. "Don't you sleep," hissed Chanticleer. "Rooster he roams about, John he roams about," John said proudly, "each to each and same as to other." Chanticleer closed his eyes and then opened them again, preparing for still another word of his criminal neglect. "What, John," he whispered, "is the trouble in the south?" "Foxface," announced the weasel. He winked at Chalcedony, verifying terror. Chanticleer stiffened. "Ooh, Foxface ghouling on the plain," hooted John Wesley. Chanticleer was suffering. "I do not," he whispered, "understand you, John. What is the trouble?" "Why, is Foxface, is Rustlebones come back again," said John. "Grave couldn't keep a fox down when the ice pops, and whoops, threw him bones back up again." All at once it seemed as though Lord Chanticleer doubled in size. His feathers stood from his body, and a vicious hissing erupted from his beak. He threw out his wings and leaped into the air. He beat them savagely, rising to the shrieking wind, and then himself tore south in the streaming, and gone. "Chickie," said the weasel to Chalcedony, "gots to go, John does. A rooster needs a good somebody by his side, because who's not scared to look at death? Why, John!" One creature was cheerful in that winter's night. Just look at the effect he had had on Chanticleer. Grand. One ran south, excited. The other lay alone, waiting until she was truly alone. And then she arose and pushed her insect parts together in a tidy pile. Chalcedony was ever neat. She scratched a little hole in the earth and swept the whole pile into it. "No more snacks for my lady, no," she whispered. "She's got her whimsies, doesn't she? Why mayn't my lady say no when she wants to, and still remain a lady?" But she hung her head at the roost and said, "No, lady never ate garbage. No, Chalcedony's no lady."